Hi, and welcome to Saturday, your daily dose of Harry Potter. My name is Alex, and it is very lovely to meet you all. My Harry Potter discovery story is very simple. I was in 8th grade, and I had a teacher and a friend who both recommended the series, and I started it because they asked me to, and the rest is history. Harry Potter has been my life for the last 11 years since I started that first page. I'm one of those people who can honestly say that they would be a different person, a completely different person if I had never started this series, and for that I'm so grateful to J.K. Rowling. I'm going to start with my favorite line from these 4 chapters, the first 4 chapters of Sorcerer's Stone. I think this is something I'm going to do every week, just to let you know what my favorite line from our passage is and why. From the first 4 chapters of the first Harry Potter book, my favorite line is Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal, thank you very much. And it's my favorite line from this section for a couple different reasons, and the first one is purely sentimental. It's the first line of an epic story that has completely encompassed my life, and that first line just means the beginning of something that's very special to me. I also love this line because the voice of the narrator is very strong right here. You can tell what the Dursleys think about being normal, and you can also kind of tell what the narrator thinks of being normal. And that's somewhat unusual in Harry Potter. The narrator doesn't always have a very strong voice, but I like it here very much. There are only a couple of specific things that I want to mention from this section, and the first one is in chapter 1 when Vernon Dursley sees the cat, which we later find out is Professor McGonagall, and he kind of tries to explain it away. His first instinct is, oh, there's a cat reading a map, and then he immediately says, no, cats can't read maps. And this introduces the idea that people often only see what they want to see, and that's something that comes up a few times in the series, and I like that people see what they want to see. Maybe something we should all be aware of in ourselves. The other specific thing I want to bring up from this section is in chapter 4, just the introduction to Hagrid, who is this enormous, supposedly terrifying man to look at, and this is what I think is the first big example of J.K. Rowling taking something that's very present in international mythology. Giant stories are present in Greek mythology, in Norse mythology, in Celtic mythology, in English folklore, and even in the Bible. But giants are often portrayed, or almost always portrayed, as enemies. They're terrifying, they're violent, they're not friendly at all. And so this is something where J.K. Rowling has taken a fantastical element from history and introduced it into her own literature, her own world, and made it her own. In this case, we have Hagrid, who is large and scary, but once you get to know him, he's actually very compassionate and very funny. He sits on the cake, and he's got mice in his pocket, and he's silly. And I think that's very characteristic of J.K. Rowling's writing, where she can take something and introduce it into her world in a way that makes it different. Very quickly, I want to weigh in on something that was brought up by a couple of other people, and that is the issue of where did Harry's grandparents go? Why did he have to be raised by the Dursleys, and what happened to Mr. and Mrs. Evans and the elder Mr. and Mrs. Potter, and why should they be gone when they shouldn't be very old? I just have to say that I don't have a problem with this the way that a lot of other people do. I don't know what happened to the rest of Harry's family, but I don't think it's important that we do know. Maybe at some point J.K. Rowling will tell us where his grandparents went, but essentially I think it's something that just has to be. Harry Potter is a hero's path tale, and a fundamental part of the hero's path tale is your hero, or our hero, has to be raised in an environment that is not happy. They're almost always orphaned, and they have to come through difficult childhoods to become the strong leaders that they are. And Harry is very true to this archetype. So that's essentially how I feel. So that's why I'm kind of okay with that question just being out there. It doesn't bother me not to know. When I'm rereading this series, and keep in mind that I've read this series between 10 and 20 times, and this book specifically closer to 20, I'm always struck by J.K. Rowling's ability to master plan. And by that I mean introducing elements very early on that are going to return sometimes many books down the line. If you've never read and this is your first time going through this series, you might want to tune out now because I'm going to talk about a couple specific things. Just in these first 4 chapters, we've been introduced to the Deluminator, to the ideas of Animagi and Parseltongue. We've also heard the names Sirius Black and Daedalus Diggle, people that we will meet down the line. I think that just goes to show how astoundingly complex J.K. Rowling's mind is. That these are things that would not be written into the series until years later, and even at this point, writing her first novel, she already had them cemented in her mind. I think that's amazing. Now, on the other hand, in this book, we do actually get an idea that it was still evolving. There are very, very few inconsistencies in Harry Potter. I think J.K. Rowling does a great job with continuity. But there is one consistency that we first experience here, and it has nothing to do with plot. It's actually a consistency in point of view. Chapter 1 of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, is not centered around Harry. They speak about Harry, but you spend that chapter following around Uncle Vernon or listening to Dumbledore speak to McGonagall. Harry is still a baby, so obviously we're not listening to his thoughts. This actually only happens in one other chapter in the entire series, which is also in this book. Never again after the first book do we depart from Harry. It's not necessarily from his point of view, but we do hear his thoughts. We only see what he sees. So I kind of wonder if she had intended in the beginning to have times here and there where she would follow someone else for a scene, where she would let us experience something going on apart from Harry. And then after the first book, it just never came to pass. She never revisited the idea. That's just something I've thought about. And with that, I bid you adieu. I will be back next week, and until then, enjoy your daily doses of Harry Potter.